Welcome back to AR Tales, aka the A.R.T podcast. I am AR Ball, and today I am joined by P.L. Stuart, author of the Drowned Kingdom series. PL, how you doing?
How you doing, AR? Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So we were just talking a little bit before I hit record. So the Drowned Kingdom just released now all on Amazon Kindle. Pick it up now. Make sure to give it a read. Support the author. He's phenomenal. I've been, you know, we've been getting to know our show a little bit for a couple months now on Twitter. There's been long overdue this little chat, but we were just talking a little bit before I hit record. This standalone is out now. Again, make sure to buy it. But it's planned 7 books. No.
Yes, that's correct. 7 books, and then another set of two separate prequel trilogies, and then another 7 books, picking up where the original 7 left off.
Oh, very, very cool. I actually have kind of like a similar, very like long saga with like mine. That like the first like 5 books are just like the intro, and then it starts like going on. It's like playing like 20 something books. Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome that I'm actually assuming that we have a similar. How did the mythos of the Drowned Kingdom start? How did that begin? And you know what? Before we get into that, how did writing as a general start for you? When did that become into into Genesis for your
That
life?
Genesis evolved in childhood. I used to write stories all the time, and people say, "Wow, your stories, man, you can write." And I do to entertain my family. And then it got into when you get into elementary school levels, like, "Oh, you're a creative writer, you get good marks." And then from there, it's like I always wanted to write a book, but time, circumstance, you're doing other things. It was all about sports or chasing girls or you what have you, right?
Yeah.
And as life didn't get in the way, certainly took me down a different path. But I wrote for things like community newspapers. I wrote for organ magazines, for volunteer organizations, things like that, but never a novel. So now in my 50s, I'm a published author. It's crazy. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Honestly, I've spoken to a couple of people in your in your same kind of like point in life that they started a little bit late, but regardless at what point you start at, it's the point that you started. I mean, well, I can't believe he's in every movie. He's always the narrator of every movie. He like his acting style is so popular that it's actually developed like a psychological thing that if you read a quote by him, it automatically plays his voice in your head. What Nelson Mandela? No, it's not that.
James Earl Jones,
My God,
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman. Thank you,
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman. Like the powerhouse of an actor that he is, only started acting in like 50s or like 60s. It really age is just a butt of number.
Yeah, and you know what? It's my youngest son, who's quite religious. He says God's timing is always perfect. My lovely wife always says that what's for you won't go by you. So it was meant to be now. God willing, I live a long life, and I have, as I told you, how many books I plan to write, just like you. That would take me well into my 70s. So hopefully, I have all my faculties and everything, my health. I can still put some arthritic fingers on keyboard and still pound out some works. So yeah.
Well, how is your writing process nowadays?
My writing process is fantastic. That being said, I'll be honest with you, being an indie author, so much of your day is devoted to self-promotion and social media if you want to be successful. So
Mm.
Twitter, making connections, marketing your book, establishing those people that could potentially your audience that could potentially buy your book. That is a big part. I have to devote a lot of time to that now. So that eats up a huge chunk of, as an indie or self-published author, that perhaps a traditional author, although that's changed a bit now, doesn't have to devote to, because they have the huge marketing machines of the big five. So actually now it's more big two or three, traditional New York and London publishing houses behind them. So
Yeah, it's very interesting how the entire industry has changed and how it's shifting. how people are more exactly how you said, is it being come it's all in house. You know, one of my favorite things that I'd like to kind of like, I don't know, roar about to my fellow authors is that we write, or fellow indie authors anyway, is that we write our own copyright pages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is a that was a full salary uh, position prior with the big publishing houses, and now that's a thing that we knock out on like a Sunday. Look up a template, change it up how you need to. Now we just knock that out. The cover pages, all these things, these were full industries of people working. And it's kind of weird to think about it that way, but it's all just on one person now. It's all on our heads, and there's everything has a great and a good to it, right? It's a dyad effect, right? So there's the awesome effect that you have everything creatively to be able to manipulate, and then there's a negative effect that you have everything to deal with. It's all on your head.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate. I'm blessed with. I went the indie route, so I'm not. Enough respect to you, my brother. Like if you're fully self-published, hats off to you. I have a wonderful indie publisher called Friesen Press. They're like the Cadillac or Mercedes of, I think, of indie publishing in Canada. So they're fantastic. They did, for example, my cover. They do all the print stuff. They make this book, A Drowned Kingdom, look. This is the author proof copy, look like gold, right? Also, my lovely wife, who is my Debbie, who's my business manager, marketing manager, promotional manager, agent extraordinaire. So she handles a lot of that side and allows me more time to write, but also to make connections on social media, promote the book, and these things like that. So I'm very blessed. But you, my friend, hats off to you and all the people that do it from start to finish. Like I cannot imagine what that looks like. So that's why your accomplishments will dwarf mine in terms of when your book, blows up, right? Because I had a lot more help. It's still hard and it's still a lot more work than being published, but not like you, my friend. Hats off to you. Hats off to you.
Well, thank you, but I definitely don't want to, dwarf your. I can't say I'm dwarfing your accomplishments by at all because it's just impossible. Any person, it's almost like when you do something like when you achieve something high in like a sports or do something high in academics, when you see another person that does it, it's like, yeah, I don't care what genre, what anything you did it in, just the fact that we're in the fact that we did it, it's a lot of work. Like I had a degree, I got a degree in engineering. Any person, I don't care what school, I don't care where you're coming from, anything. And if you're a dog and you got a 3-year engineering and God knows what type of engineering, hats off. That's tough. Yeah. And I get it. It's like, if we're at a bar, that's a drink automatically, no problem. Like it's just it's a respect thing. And now that I went the author route after school, I feel the exact same way to any person that picks up the pen. Well, nowadays, picked up the laptop. Because it really is walking up a very, very, very steep mountain.
Yeah, and you know what? The vast preponderance of writers never actually publish. It's only actually a small percentage that end up doing the entire thing. And that's not to say some of these authors that never actually see to fruition are brilliant. Other things happen. They get discouraged. My mother is one of them. My mother, now in her mid 80s, she's where I believe with God, I got my writing abilities from. And she wrote a romance, and she wrote a romance novel, probably in her 30s, 40s. I thought it was fantastic. When I look back now, and I go, oh my gosh! And she submitted back then. Really, the only option was traditionally published back then. She submitted. She got one rejection letter. Whereas to be published, normally you go dozens, hundreds, right? You got one, and that was it. She's like, okay, I'm done, and she never pursued it. And I so wish that she did. I guess one of the reasons that gives me a real sense of pride and accomplishment is that she can vicariously now knowing that I'm published kind of live that out through me. So because I owe it all to her. Thank you, Mom. I love you.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. But it's the writing community, as is so diverse. The skills, the abilities. Oh my gosh! Like it just blows you away when you start delving into the backgrounds of the people in writing community. it's mind-boggling, right? And these unique, eclectic things that they can do. And my background is English. That's my major in university, with a minor in history and a specialty in like medieval English literature. And but again, uh, there's
Okay.
that's just one small little piece of the writing community and all the diverse talents that people bring, right? So yeah, it's incredible.
Now, one thing that I've been kind of just like has been pestering my mind the moment you said is that you've been writing it since you were young, right? Do you know at what age, like 11, 12, like was that around the time that you were still playing with toys?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I have stories stored away that I believe the youngest one is 6 or 7, and they continued sporadically. I there was a period where I certainly, I really wasn't writing at all for the vast majority of my adult life. I had a very busy career, I had a young family, I had kids young.
Mm.
I got married young, things, but but then I in my mind somewhere I knew one of my best friends from high school actually reminded me when I messaged him to say I was published and to send him the Amazon link that, hey man, you were talking about this way back in the day in high school. We're sitting in what's called the Market Square in our collegiate where everybody hangs out, where people used to break dance and stuff like that. And you were talking about it back then, man. So big up on you. You did it. So yeah. So it's funny that the I mean I don't have regrets. I on one hand you say, oh well, imagine the longevity of a career you could have had if you start writing and publishing in your 20s, right? But
Mm.
it wasn't meant to happen then, and I don't believe I would be nearly as good a writer. I'm not boasting. I don't think I'm a novice writer. Let's face facts, because I'm just now published. But I don't think I would have been written as well honed and well crafted a story as I could now with all the life experience I have behind me in my
Mm.
50s. I've had a lot of careers. I've had different marriages. I've gone through a lot in my life, and but that's all been a positive and all contributed to some of the themes and things you'll see in my writing. So
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one of the reasons why I like do this podcast. I think that everything about a writer bleeds into the writing. Everything about the personality, the TV, the TV that they watch, the movies that they really are a fan of, the other writings that they read and get impassioned about, and it bleeds into their writing a little bit. Like I'm a huge fan of like science fiction, Asimov, and C. Clark, and all the all the greats, obviously, and then all the nuances, all the new people. I also am a huge history buff. So the moment you talked about that, I've actually been getting into medieval, like Arthurian, the matter of England, the matter of France. I've been getting into that a little bit. So that's gonna be a cool like second half of the podcast. But focusing more on the writing, the reason I asked about the toys thing is because I feel like a lot of people that like started that a lot of writers so far have said that like at some point they made really vivid plots with their toys, that like the same gameplay that they would do would kind of like bleed into their gameplay without even like really thinking about it. And it would and they weren't even conscious about it until like later, as you said, the creative classes later in high school and things like that. I wasn't conscious to it until well into my college career. But it's amazing that people were able to like you were able to focus on so young and to know at 6 years old, because it makes me wonder how much of the story now from A Drowned Kingdom is from then.
well, it's a very, very, very small portion of it. That being said, there are themes that permeate the novel that are present. The characters are different, the setting is different, the story essentially is very different. However, there are themes and concepts that still linger from a young age that have been fleshed out in some very unique ways since over the course of an adult life. But yeah, I for the most part, it has evolved in its own unique direction. But there are some strings that I've pulled back from childhood that those threads run through the novel.
And how did those inspirations start? The childhood. uh, genesis of what the Drowned Kingdom would become?
That genesis started with probably three things. One, a love of high fantasy. So the Tolkien-esque type fantasy, where complete world building, immersive world building, and a story that is very grandiose, and your large setting, and the fate of a lot of things hinged on the story. Although it's almost a in some ways, that way I read, it's a small story that evolves and escalates and mushrooms into a bigger story.
Mm.
And the second thing is my experiences as a racialized person. That definitely has an impact on how I write, in a positive way. And the third thing is a sense of, and you touched on it, is history. Again, besides English literature, medieval literature, I believe I'm somewhat of a student of history, and what it's always fascinating me, even as a young age, is how does history repeat itself? How does history? Who writes history? Who decides what history is? Growing up as a young black person, seeing an absence of history, black history,
Mm.
in I'm a Canadian, so in Canadian history textbooks, in the encyclopedia back then, you used to read encyclopedias to get a lot of your learning. Seeing that, very much, I learned at an early age that that saying that history is written by the winners, and it became obvious to me that people from diverse and racialized backgrounds, and as I grew older, I was very young then, and people, and now I will say people from backgrounds that it would seem that in Western society are identified as the other, LGBTQ plus community, etc. Like, history is written by not those people. So that always intrigued me, and I want to bring that element into my writing.
Without a single doubt. Well, can you continue on the whole historical impact of it? Like, for example, Game of Thrones is known for kind of going along the lines of the War of Roses that happened in England. Is there anything that inspired you, kind of from a historical reference, in order to get the idea to jumpstart what a Drowned Kingdom is?
Well, yes. Well, the tale and the whole premise of the tale starts with my version of the Atlantis myth. Um,
Nice, I knew it.
my Atlantis. I didn't get too creative there. My Atlantis is called Atalantics. I think you'll find everything else is very unique and not derivative, but I wanted to draw people back to that name because Plato, the famous philosopher who
Yeah.
brought us the Atlantis myth, I wanted to pay homage to him, keep grounded in that, but everything else is very different. My Atalantics is not set in somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea, in that era time frame, a Greek Athenian type world. No, it's much more of a, if I can describe it, a cross between medieval Britain with a slice of colonial Rule Britannia is Britain, with a mix of a lot of other cultures thrown in there that
Right.
that make an interesting flavor, but it feels very. I'm going to say the close things. It feels a bit medieval Britain. That being said, um, you know the the tale is from a historical perspective. What really fascinated me is all empires, the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the British Empire, all empires have cycles. And those cycles traditionally start with the empire rising, acquiring territory, conquering other nations, becoming bloated, and
Overstretching their ability.
then eventually falling.
Yep.
And how that fall comes about, various theories. It very depends on the empire, depends on the circumstances,
Mm.
but also empires tend to have a real strong belief in their own sense of purpose and righteousness, and tend to definitely believe that their will, for the good of those that they conquer, should be imposed on the rest of the world. Their way is the best. They're doing it. Everybody's going to benefit from what they're doing. They're going to bring civilization, and culture, and sophistication, and a real religion to the rest of the world, and that is part of what drives one part, not the only part, not even the main part, but one part of where my tale goes.
I mean, to be fair,
My story.
you just described America, so I mean, it hasn't ended. You know what I
True,
mean? We go,
true
we
that,
go,
true
we go
that,
over to a country. We're like, hey,
true that.
fucko, you want a dam or something? We'll build you a nice dam. Don't even worry about it. We'll pay you back. Oh, you can't pay it back. All right, listen. We're just gonna take all your, we're just gonna build a military base over here. Don't even worry about it. It's for your benefit in case anything pops off. Wait, but why would anything pop off? We're peaceful. In case. I imagine everybody's like in a slick suit. Hey.
Well, unfortunately, for all of the fantastic things that the United States has done, for all the fantastic things Western society going back in centuries has done, with that, there is a legacy, as you know, of some horrible things, um, and empires. I've considered myself a spiritual and somewhat religious person.
Hmm.
We do have to acknowledge the benefits that organized religion has brought to Western society, but with those have come some real pitfalls,
Huge, major
and those
crusades,
are those are
longest
also
war ever.
those are also things that I address, and but ultimately, this story is first and foremost a real high fantasy novel with lords, ladies, princes, battles, political intrigue, and all those things. But the core of the tale is simply about a man, and a man who comes from a position of privilege in that society.
The second
And
prince.
yes, the second prince, Othrin.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, for all intents and purposes, someone who very much believes in the superiority of his own race, very much believes in the superiority of his own religion and the exclusivity. You don't have a choice. Like, that is the only religion. Everything else is, uh, everything else
Blasphemy.
is heathen. Everything
Yeah.
else is pagan. Everything else is
Heresy.
and heresy, and very much believes that for the benefit of mankind, humankind, um, it must be imposed throughout the world from his kingdom,
Mm.
and his kingdom must rule the universal world for the good of the world, and it has dominated the landscape, and he, like most of the people in society, believe that, especially the upper echelon society, that this should continue and this spreading of monotheism should continue.
Mm.
And but the story is about the fact that when things happen to him, when disaster strikes, and he is thrust into a circumstance where he's no longer in such a privileged position, and that he's exposed to different cultures and different religions, and has a lot of his very entrenched values and beliefs about history and what happened, and where technologies came from, who created what, as these things get burst and flipped on their head, how he reacts, how he deals with it, what he thinks. It's the best thing the best uh, way to really summarize it is that it's the story of someone. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to use the term of essentially being woke.
Mm.
Uh, that doesn't mean he's gonna come all the way. You're gonna have to see the find out for yourself. He may not. That doesn't mean he's gonna come a tenth of the way. It just means that he's going to be exposed to things that are going to challenge his long-held beliefs and understanding of the world, and it's going to affect how he deals with being someone who is a man of destiny.
Now that is very cool. Well, another thing I have just like going on in my head the moment you said it is you said that you paid homage to Plato when this whole idea of Atalantis, right?
Atlantics. That's my.
Atlantics. All right, the ending got me mixed up there. So I'm assuming that this city that you have is in between the pillars of Hercules. Did you pay that close of a homage, or did you just bend it kind of like around the written tales that Plato wrote of the society?
No, so my version is a unique, completely different world. I simply use the name. You can translate this. All tales come from places where we weren't there. We don't know really. I mean, we have historical documents, we have records, but it's tales upon tales. It's passed down. So we don't really know what things look like. We don't really know, for example, where Atlantis in the context of our world was. In the context of the world I built, it's a completely unique world. It's not. It's an Earth. It's a place, but it's not. It's not centuries ago Earth as we know it. So it's complete high fantasy. It's complete unique world building, unique places, unique continents, unique kingdoms. But all I did was use that name to again pay homage and give some props to Plato for his tale because I'm fascinated by it,
Mm.
and use some elements of the tale which other writers have used to varying degrees, from Tolkien to I can name. There's a host of writers that have had an Atlantis type place in their writing,
Okay.
and this is simply my version. And if you read Plato's tale, and Critias as well, who wrote about Atlantis. Again, we're talking about Greek and Athenian philosophy now. They their tales. There are definitely some elements in that tale, without giving away too much, that if you read them and you compare it to my work, you'll see. Okay, well, I can see where the similarities lie and
Hmm.
where the parallels are. So.
No, yeah, because that's actually one of my favorite ideas. I actually, my running theory right now is that it's in the Sahara. Well, it was in the Sahara, Atlantis. Because if you kind of like do like well, do the math. Like I really did all that crazy stuff. I saw a video one time of a person doing like the geographical tectonic plates moving
Yeah.
around how things would have been around the time, and Sahara would have been clearly like underwater. So and like the islands, because the whole thing of like Hercules, the pillars of Hercules that I was referring to in Plato's is that like in his thing is that he says that Atlantis lies in between the pillars of Hercules. So people were always describing that as being the port of the Mediterranean, and then somebody and then like but it was always false because of how the Mediterranean is now. But then the person did it to how it is, and then the port of it would be between the Sahara. It's actually an awesome video, and just like it, just gets your mind rolling with all the possibilities that would have diluted that entire landmass in that way. Because like beautiful kind of like ideology. Because again, it's one of the most awesome things about myth. It's like the idea that it's always kind of like lingering there, but there's no solid
Yes.
anything to it. And it's one of the best like mental candies to like chew around with as an author, as a potential creative, because you can just go off and off and off and off,
Yeah, and the thing is that everybody has a theory
Mm.
about what Atlantis was, where it was, who lived there, what the society was like, and you have from versions so extreme from it being a society that existed underwater, a la Aquaman,
Mm.
to a totally above water society that was something much more akin to ancient Athens, Sparta, these powerful societies that existed before the birth of Christ. So, the what I've done is mix a lot of parts of history into my version of Atlantis.
Mm.
But again, you'll find it has a very medieval flavor to it. But what I love about it is my version. I love all versions, But what I like about my version is that you know the the Atlantics that I've
Stuart. Uh-oh, it seems like we're having some technical difficulties here. I wonder if I should pause it. All right, let me pause it real quick just to make sure that it's all going groovy.
okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, so we are back. Sorry about that little technical difficulty right there. But sliding right back into what we were talking about, I believe we were in the middle of your version of Atlantis. The last thing that I remember you go talking about before you cut off was saying that you love everybody's version of Atlantis, but you like your specific version because, and you were about to detail why.
Oh, I like it because it really brings out the colonial aspect of the kingdom that I've built. And the themes of my book, colonialism, patriarchy, racism, misogyny, PTSD, um,
Nice.
religious intolerance, homophobia, those are all themes that, sorry, those are all things that run through my book, but specifically on my Atlantis, which is Atlantics, the colonialism and that aspect, and how a colonial type society handles those things and how they view those things, and how authoring as someone at the pinnacle of the society views those things, and in a medieval type context, what you can imagine the value system would be. That's really, I feel, is compelling reading, and I believe that, you know, I said in another podcast, I bet the farm on Othran. I wagered that people will be drawn to this guy. He's very controversial. He is not someone who is totally likable. There are a lot of things to like about him, and he does have a lot of redeeming qualities. But you're gonna see, because it's a first person narrative, you're gonna hear his voice and what he thinks about the world, and he has a lot of issues. And but again, I think that that's going to make for some very interesting reading when he, especially when he interacts with people who have different views from his, and or people who have the same views as him, and that reinforce his views, and how he copes with, again, being knocked off his pedestal of privilege a bit.
Mm, losing his rank.
Yeah, he you know again, without giving away the plot, he's the second prince, so he's not the crown prince. Essentially, he's a spare heir, but that still means he's again at the top of. He is very entitled, and it definitely means that he is part of the regime that is there to reinforce the patriarchy and the religious intolerance and the colonialism. He that's where he's coming from. So when his position of privilege is at least somewhat removed from him, not entirely, he's still a big leader. It really throws him for a loop. And when he's thrown in with people who are not from his society, his society is very homogenous. When he's thrown from that society, again, it's a whirlwind for him, and he doesn't have time to properly assess because so many things are happening to him at once. His coping skills are somewhat compromised, and he doesn't have time to properly assess everything that's happening. The positives with him is that I believe you'll find he's a very logical person, and he does have, again, redeeming qualities. He is a very bright person, but he is limited in a lot of the ways he thinks. Yet, one positive about him is that he will try and apply logic and rational thinking to figure his way through some of these issues. But that will also send him to the path where everything he believes in is being challenged and within his own mind. And that's not easy. When you grow up believing X and you find out Y could be true, especially for someone in his position. And there's some other things going on that you'll see why it's particularly complex for him. Yeah, you have to read the book to understand why. But
Mm.
he very much unfortunately for him, has absolutely no time to properly process and assess the things that come at him because they come so fast. And he will just have to rely on his own wits, his own sense of what's right and wrong, and those around him who can provide him some modicum of practical and sensible advice, and who know more about certain things than he does, because the hardest thing for him is realizing that he doesn't know everything.
Mm.
He is aware that he needs to lean on people to a certain degree. He doesn't like to admit it, but he knows he does, and he's not one for details. So he needs to rely on certain people to do some of the detail work. But he is challenged intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, in ways that really shake the foundations of who he is. But to his credit, again, he tries to approach those things as logically and pragmatically as he can.
So he's a very definitive leader then.
Yes, he's the lead. He's the lead. His voice is his first person. He's the lead character, the lead protagonist. Everything is seen through his lens, and that limits the lens, of course. But that being said, I think the lens is broad enough because of the position he holds in the tale that you will see enough of what's going on, and of course, the reader is there to make their own judgments. That's the beauty of reading. I remember getting some reviews from different authors, peer reviews and professional reviews, and it was such what a contrast between what some people saw in the book and other people saw. It was just absolutely fascinating. That people drew inference in there that even I, who wrote the book, I'm thinking I didn't really write it that way, but you know what? That's really insightful, and I can see how you thought that, and that's really really smart. That's amazing that you drew that out of the book, and I didn't even think about that. I didn't write it that intended that way, but you saw it that way, like so. And that's again, reading is so subjective, and that's how it should be. Everyone's going to get something different out of your book, right? I might read your book and I'll come to you, AR, like, oh, you must have meant this by that. And you'd be like, what? I didn't really mean that, but oh, okay, well, I guess that's how you felt, like so. And that's, like I said, that's the beauty of reading. So
I'll be honest, that happened to me with like the first short story I ever wrote. I published it on Reddit, and it got it got trashed. People were just like tore it apart. Ironically enough, I put it again 1 year later, and it got like a couple awards. So unreal.
Wow, fantastic! Congrats, man.
Same platform. So just telling you how finicky people can be. But the very first time that I put it on there, one of the main things that I got that just like tore it apart, where people were putting like so much like negative inference on it, because when I put it, it was basically a very short 300-word dystopian short story. And people put all these things on, and I'm like even personal attacks. There were people on there that they were going like, "Oh, you probably are like are bored and like negative in your house, and you're doing all this crazy stuff." And like and honestly, I made a huge mistake too. Is that I put Trump's name in there. I'm not political, and the story's not political at all, but I put it in there just for like as a timepiece. You know what I mean? To understand that this is the era that where it came from, and this is where it goes. And people were immediately it's like, oh, the moment it got to people were saying all these things that it was like political, and then one random person out of nowhere like deconstructed all of that and said how positive the story was, and she picked up on notes that I didn't even infer on when I wrote it. Unreal. That one little spark honestly like helped me out, because that was the first thing I ever wrote ever, period. And then like I got trashed on that, and I was like, Jesus. But then that one little thing, and then like after that I wrote phenomenal. I actually really give credit to that little trashing session, because it kind of it opened my eyes to how much little things will turn off a person. Like I always thought that when I read my friend's stuff, for example, grammar, or random comma that's missing, I never actually, put that against them. I just kind of correct it in my own head and read on through and still give like awesome feedback if it's like if the content's good. But for whatever reason, there's a lot of people that one missed up comment and it's like, oh, done in the trash, and it's like, dude, what? Give me a break. I can't tell you how many times I catch errors in my favorite writing.
Yes.
In Hitchhiker's Guide of the Galaxy. I'll read through stuff and be like, oh, that's kind of weird. And maybe it's the publisher's fault. It's probably not even the writer's fault. Maybe it's like after so many editions, one little thing, it just gets moved apart. But how can you discredit something so much? And because we're indie authors, we have it so much more pitted against us. If you see an author, if you see Stephen King have a mistake, you'll highlight it, take a picture of it, tweet it. Oh, LOL. You're still gonna buy the book. You're gonna buy the one after too. It makes no sense. But then you do it to an indie reviewer. You'll put 2 stars, right? Talk about that. But then the end of the review, we'll talk about, oh, good story though. Good story though. And why is it 2 still? Listen, I get palpitations because my stuff's not even released yet, and I'll read reviews, and it'll be like 1 star, great story, but I didn't like the color of the cover. Wait, what? 2 stars? You know what that does? You understand this is an average, right? You just killed me. Like,
yeah.
Have you ever been have you ever gotten like A's and got like a random D? Bro, you just killed me.
You're so right, man, and I'm sorry that happened to you. Obviously, it
hasn't happened yet. I'm just thinking about it.
No, I'm saying, but you're saying that when your first work got trashed and you've won awards like
the Reddit, the short story.
Yeah, but you're mentally strong. You're mentally tough, right? And
that made pretty funny, honestly. Especially the personal attacks. I was like, what the hell? Like, you don't even know. I'm happy. I wake up happy all the time. I wake up literally like whistling. What are you talking about that I'm like depressed?
I'm the same way. And you know what? My writer friend says horror stories. Like, I know I'm new to the game now, but my seasoned writer friends have horror stories about the same exact thing. People like, oh, I didn't like the color of your cover, so it didn't matter what you were. And then writing the story, totally dismissing the story for those things seemingly minor and arbitrary things. But again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And I actually wrote a blog on my website about seeking professional and peer author reviews. And you have to realize that, hey, those are things that you need, but at the same time, just remember, everybody's entitled to them. And there's going to be reasons to you that would seem totally inane that someone would dismiss your work, but they're entitled to that, and that's what they'll do. And unfortunately, because your work is out in the world and subject to everyone's opinion, once it's published, it's like your baby. You gotta let it go. You have to let it go. And just like your own child may be criticized, and it will pain you, and you want to protect them from everything. They have to grow, and they have to be. That's part of the maturation process. So you have to allow your work to be subject to critique. You have to receive constructive feedback, and you have to be willing to have your work, as you said, ripped apart, and at the same time have the same confidence. Yet still, the paradox: have the confidence no matter what. Yes, take the criticism that maybe someone points something out that what, they're right. And in my next book, I believe I can use what they said to help enhance my book and make it better. Exactly. But this piece of advice, this one, I'm gonna toss it. I don't value that the same way. I've kind of vetted it with my peers, and I've looked at myself. No, you know what? I respect your opinion. Thank you for giving it to me, but that one now. But this one, I think that's something valuable. I'm growing and evolving as a writer, and I think that's something that I see that perhaps potentially can help improve my work. And but regardless, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's like, thank you for your response, and great. Mm-hmm. That's it. There's nothing else. That's how we as professionals, as that's how we handle things, right? So, but and I'm in that stage now where too, but you can't help being nervous. My book is out there now. Some people are gonna, some people are not gonna like it, right? My professional reviews, the 2 of them, I thought one was very strong. One I thought was kind of mixed. One was very strong, one was kind of mixed. They both there was positives in both, but one person didn't like elements that I felt were some of the really strong parts of the book. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll take that, and but I didn't phase me because I knew that most of the reviewed the book felt that those same parts that person liked were some of the strongest parts of the book. And I felt it was the strongest part of the book. So that's one of those ones I said, okay, thank you for your opinion. However, respectfully, I'm just going to, And then one person brought something like, you know what? That's something that I need to take an advice, and I think I can see how that, and for future books, I need to keep that in mind. nothing necessarily going to change anything, but just something to keep in mind, right? So, but overall, the reception is extremely positive. I can say it's been more positive than negative, and as long as it continues that way, and the proof of the pudding will be, part of it anyways, will be how many people buy my book, because a lot of it will be obviously word of mouth reference, just like all of our work. You know, people endorse the book and people want to hear about it and they think it's great, and the friend says, oh man, this book, and okay, someone buys it. So a lot of it on the other flip side will be marketing, how well you market the book. But ultimately, I think books that stand the test of time are simply well-written books that are good. So, I won't know whether John Kingdom's a well-written book for probably a decade. But if it's still selling well and receiving a fair amount of critical acclaim from people who read it, then I'll know it would have done well. But that's a long game. And, you have to be patient and just embrace the process, because there's parts that aren't going to be pleasant when they're getting those negative reviews, like, those first ones that are really bad. And some of them, let's face facts, unfortunately, there are people who, they do spite reviews. They do just, there's trolls and there's people who unfortunately engage in that stuff for whatever reasons. Mm-hmm. And, you have to take that, but hopefully there will be enough really positive views to counteract that. So yeah, but I hear you. I hear you.
No, and honestly, you touched on a point that I thought was really interesting too, is that there really is a dichotomy with like how you get reviews, how you get critical peer reviews, how everything happens, because everything is a grain of salt. The thing, and it's one of the most, I think it's one of the scariest things about being an author, is that when you create a piece and you create your own baby, and you kind of like just in your own echo chamber of like what you think is great, and you're thinking of all these things, the moment you start inviting other people, there are times there are people go like, all right, I see what you're doing here, but you should bend it a little bit more here so it's more aligned with other things that have been out. When in reality, it's like, all right, but I'm not trying to bend, this is like a new thing here. It's like, but then at the same point, you also have to ground yourself. It's like, all right, but then there really is, like, it's kind of, it really is a back and forth, because you're trying to create something your own that has your stamp on it. But at the same time, you don't want to stray too far away, because you do want to, it's a back and forth.
And that's part of the benefits, that paradox you speak of. That's part of the benefits of being an indie author, I believe, or self-published author. So you and I, we have almost complete creative freedom to do what we want to do. I strongly encourage and suggest that every indie or self-published author engage a professional editor, several rounds actually, to make sure their work is polished, because there's certain things even just spelling, grammar, punctuation, you go blind to your work after a while. You will see the word T-O, but it's really supposed to be T-O-O, and you'll look over that paragraph 50 times and you won't realize it. And someone's go, hey, and because you could become blind to your work and your errors.
Yep, because like you're just like there, like, no, please continue.
Yeah, no, but at the same time, as an indie or self-published author, I don't think you could put a price on the creative license you have to write your story the way you want, publish the way you want, and have no one tell you that you need to do otherwise. You must relinquish a measure of that control, a large measure of that control, if you go the traditional published route. Now, I never even attempted that route. I felt a lot of circumstances led me to that decision. My age, I'm in my 50s. I want to get published. Unfortunately, I feel I'm a pretty patient guy in general, but I felt I was not willing to go through, first querying just to find an agent, just to find representation. And then, so that could take years, hundreds, thousands of queries, and then find an agent, and then have the agent now have to sell your book and shop around to all these publishers. I was like, that could take years for my work to be published. Yep. So
that's 5% every person that comes in.
Yeah, so I chose that wasn't the route for me. So I felt that the self-published / indie route allowed me a very expedient way to publish my book, to maintain the creative control, and ultimately to have my story reach the readership that I wanted. So everybody has to make the decision. It's a tough one. You don't have to. You don't have to do it exclusively. a lot of people, they've gone through this transition back and forth from indie to trad published, and like I've met people that have done it several times. They started out, for example, trad published. They got dropped by their publisher for they had a book deal, got dropped. Then they went indie. Then someone picked it up. They've gone through all these iterations of. But for me, like I said, to be honest with you, I see myself as having an indie author career.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who knows what will happen in the future? I mean, there's some fantastic examples of, Evan Winter, who's wrote Fires of Vengeance, Rage of Dragons. Fantastic author, African American, actually Canadian origin author. So he wrote, self-published first. And what happened to him, I believe, was that Reddit was really pumping and promoting his stuff. And as you know, there's a lot of people in the industry influencers that creep on Reddit. And it was some of the Orbit people that saw his stuff, were intrigued, made contact, reached out. And after discussion, hey, you know what? You might want to get yourself an agent because we like to pick you up. And that's what happened. And now his subsequent works are being traditionally published. So, it can happen. And that's a fantastic success story. Kudos for him. It doesn't happen to everybody. It doesn't happen to most people. That's these facts. But the industry, as you talked about, you made an excellent point, is changing and evolving. And I think there's more pressure now than ever on traditionally published authors to do much more self-promotion, much more marketing of themselves, much more, because resources are finite. And with the amalgamation of the big houses, it's slowly growing into this mega one publishing and more than that, Amazon, because Amazon is a game changer. Amazon is I mean, let's face facts. If Bezos gets bored and decides I'm just gonna buy everything, so I'm insured to everything, he can't. And that's it. And then no more trad publishing companies, at least as we know it. It's like going to buy a coffee, right? For him, right? He decides, oh, you know what, guys? Yep, I just want the whole thing, and he does it. And you know what? So
there's monopoly laws, but still, I mean,
Yeah, but still, exactly, my friend. But we all know how those go, right?
Yeah.
We all know how those go. And if the political will is there and the interest is there, and enough money is rolled up on the table, it's gonna happen, right? There's some huge monopolies. There's some huge conglomerates, the Amazons, the Microsoft, the Apples, the Microsoft, like you can only stop them so much for so long. We know that, right? They may derail themselves, but when they're in their peak, they're like they steamroll over everything, right? And kudos to them that they're able to do that. At the same time, they can definitely change the landscape of publishing. And I think Amazon itself is really, as far as I can see, I think that's the future of publishing. I think that's the future of publishing, and I think that there may come a time where they elect to simply buy out what's left of traditional publishing, and then we'll see what it looks like after that. But that would essentially mean that almost every author would become an indie author. And, where our advantage, you and I and the people in our milieu, would be that we are already used to this shameless, flagging and self-promotion, this concept, which I hate. And I've said this in every interview I've done so far. I go on record. I say it on all my social media. I detest that part of my authorpreneurship life. I hate it. I'd much rather promote your work. I love promoting other people's work. I can get pumped and excited and go, yeah, I can be your biggest shooter. But I feel so doing it my own work, it just, there's something loathsome about that, right? Like, you feel like you're boasting, you're bragging, you're begging, please buy my book. It's really good. And that part and you know what though? The fact that we have to do it to sell, I believe is a distinct advantage, because I see more and more the trad folks, my wonderful trad colleagues, they're getting more and more pressure. Again, as resources get finite, as the industry trade changes, I've heard from them, in some cases, traditional public companies, I know they're great, they have a lot of resources, but in some cases they're cutting back a bit. They're putting more pressure on the authors. Hey, so what are you doing to promote your book, rather than everything kind of being scheduled for them and interviews and all those things. Like, there's more and more. I think that the traditional publishing companies are leaning more on the authors now to take some ownership for promoting their own work, and and also doing even more quality checking to make sure the level of editing and things like that. I've heard a lot of stories about that. To what degree they're all factual. These are a lot of people I trust. So, but to what extent that change is going to be. But I definitely see a shift, and I definitely see more and more successful self-publishing indie authors. Like, they're really coming on now, right? They're really coming on. So, that I think there's still definitely a disparity, and unfortunately, we as indie traditional authors, as you so aptly pointed out, I don't believe we're treated on the same playing field as our traditionally published colleagues. All respect to my traditionally published colleagues, and because they have gone through the grind. Because, yeah, again, I just referred to it. All those thousands of query letters, sometimes seeking an agent, praying you get an agent, pit mad, all this stuff. You finally get one, and then they have to shop the book, and then you got to haggle over a contract and an advance, and, like,
Your
I mean,
IP.
right?
It's
It's a
insanity.
lot. It's insanity. But then our lot is insanity too, bro, because we're out there doing everything ourselves from scratch. So, without a lot of guys, like, nobody comes into this game knowing everything. You lean on your
Colleagues.
colleagues, you lean on
Yeah.
people in the industry. I will learn something from you. You will learn something from me, and we pass that knowledge on, and we build ourselves. We build each other up. And I one thing I love about the writing community, indie writing community especially, it's so supportive. Social media can be sometimes, it can be a real beast. It can be a lot of negativity and unfortunately some pettiness and meanness. A lot of, but the writing community I found is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just
Phenomenal.
phenomenal. So
Yeah.
supportive, so willing to help and raise each other up. So altruistic, and many times putting other people before you. Like, I love. That's why I love the writing community. It's
Hmm.
incredible. But I think that the indie authors now, you're going to see everything you and I and all the people that are in that boat have been doing is going to pay big dividends in the future. The way the writing industry is evolving, I think you're going to see that. Maybe not, maybe by the time you're a best-selling author on Amazon, maybe then it'll really start to, but it is changing. It is definitely changing.
Oh no, I'm fully invested. I like Neotino is actually the Twitter name is actually the publishing company I own. I started a couple months ago.
What? Excuse me. Excuse
Well,
me.
well, it's just like
Congrats,
it's not like I'm not
props, man.
I'm not boasting. Like you said, I really hate like kind of like admitting those type of things too. But it's more kind of like that's how invested I am in the industry. Like I really do believe that this is a shift. Like to me, I'm a huge music fan. So
Yeah.
what I do, I mean, like, you know what? You're actually the perfect person to really to kind of like bite into this with. And it's something that I always thought of, but like I just never really like brought it up in previous podcasts. But I'm a huge fan of the music industry. And just a history in general, like the whole point of like the interest in it and the intrigue is like as you said, history repeats itself. Does history repeat itself because like words like repeating themselves? No, it's because human emotion, for whatever reason, takes a very long time to evolve. And humans tend to do the same things over and over again. So when you want to study something for the better, you look at the past to see what was done, right? So when you look at an industry like music, for example, you look at a time like the 70s or the 60s, there are phenomenal bands that got completely like by their record labels.
Yeah.
And it happens 1,000 times over. Rihanna, in 2008, got like,
Yeah.
bent over by her manager. I mean, this happens to this day. It's been happening forever. And then what happened at the crux of the internet age? All these rappers decided to go, hey, you know what? Why do I have to listen to you? I can put all my stuff on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Everyone floats over to SoundCloud. All these rappers have these huge Twitter followings, and then the record labels come up. And instead of the record labels coming up and being like, "Hey, you know what? I'll give you a couple 100,000," these kids are starting off at like 10 million. I mean,
Yeah,
like I'm not a huge fan of his music at all, but that guy that made the Gucci Gang whatever song, the most annoying song ever. But that kid's record label was 20 million. It was one of the biggest Interscope had signed at the time. Now, whether that was merited, that's up to question. But it's just it's the buzz that internet is happening. Now, what I'm thinking right now, especially with everything that's happening with Amazon, is that we are at the same crux for the books.
yes,
If somebody were to tell me 5 years ago, hey man, the Twitter and Instagram book communities are buzzing, I would not believe you.
yeah,
But you
yeah.
go on there and they're buzzing, my dude. It's not like a couple thousand people. There's millions of accounts. It's really up there. Reading is coming back. So I think we're at the crux of a true shift in paradigm. Like the whole idea that traditional is going to be gone, that's beyond the doubt. I'm more thinking now that like authors are going to be like, basketball players, that people are going to follow us to that level, to that social media extent. People are going to, and my logic is that you need to start building the infrastructure for that now. And I think all authors need to start doing that. I think all authors should have a podcast and do their own little thing every month or so, talk about their ideas, interact with the community in a more active way, invite all other authors. Like I'm loving more and more because when I started, I felt like I was just like that one random guy, like, hey, I have a podcast. You want to talk to me? And now I'm getting more and more people go like, hey, I also have a little thing. Why don't you come over here? And I'll be like, yeah, we can do this, blah, blah, blah. And we're all sharing. It's phenomenal. And as I grow, I believe it's going to keep on getting just more and more in depth. And like I said, it really is a paradigm shift. You really need, it's Noah's flood is coming. You need to make sure your raft is set up. You get all your pigs set up so you have some food. Ghosts, do whatever you got to do. Get ready because
I,
the flood is coming. Traditional's
I
done.
I totally, my friend, that was amazing. I think your insights are spot on, so spot on. People have to understand that there are people now, and music. That thread that you pulled on music, again, spot on, right? Couldn't have picked a better analogy. If I may take it even further,
Please.
think about what exists today. There are people who start up YouTube channels and get paid for just talking about the YouTube. There are people who make millions of dollars playing video games online. There are people who essentially have made themselves rich fortunes upon
Caricatures.
fortunes. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, nobody anticipated that, hey, music's going to be largely downloaded. Like nobody's going to go. Very few people are going to go buy physical records. People couldn't foresee some of these changes. Well, some people did, obviously, but you know what I mean. So as you said, like I said, you were so spot on with your assessment that the way things are going with writing, again, we indie authors had that advantage. We were already entrepreneurs. We are already very much having our ducks in a row. You, my friend, way ahead of the game. Podcasts, the things that you were doing, cutting edge stuff, and 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 if you're on the avant garde of that stuff, then you're going to be the one of those people. You're not just a trendsetter. You become an influencer, and everything about social media, as you know, is all about influencers. Influencers drive everything. You know, everybody is. If people would sell their soul for that blue and white, that white check mark with the blue circle on Twitter, right?
I'm
People,
telling you.
you know that, right? People would sell their souls to be verified. Just have that extra credibility to say, hey, I've arrived. Because in their mind, that translates to sales, that translates to a platform, that translates to there's so much tied to that because that's the way the world works, right? People judge how successful you are by your Instagram following, by your Snapchat following, by your Twitter following, your Facebook. Like people will make those judgments of what your sphere of influence is by how powerful your social media brand is. And but there is a direct tie because let's face facts, and this is the other thing that you, like I said, you so exceptionally hit upon. Realize now that some people, I have author friends that their entire sales are generated by Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They don't do anything else. They just tweet about their books
Yep.
and get other people to read it.
Yep.
And that's how they sell.
Yep.
So, and that's free. Twitter is free. So they have virtually unlimited free advertising to sell their books. It's phenomenal. Who could have foreseen that before? So with something like that, how much reliance will you eventually need on a traditional publisher to market your books if you can actually make sales just from Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
just from Instagram, from TikTok, from Snapchat, from all these like so I say again, you know, kudos to you because you've hit the nail on the head. It is a revolution of sorts. It is a paradigm shift. I think we're on the cusp of it. I totally agree with you on the cusp of it. What it's going to turn into, I don't think any of us can really totally foresee because there's so many players and so many possibilities that could affect that. But I totally agree. We as indie authors, you're already, my brother, you are so smart and you have your stuff wired tight. You're gonna be one of those influencers. You're gonna be on that avant-garde, that cutting edge. Hopefully, I can keep up to you and keep running in your shadow. But you know, and everybody's gonna have their part. So, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that the indie authors, the self-published authors, that is the future. That is the way things are going. You look at things like Mark Lawrence, fantastic, dark fantasy author who, very philanthropically started SPFBO, the self-published fantasy blog off a contest for fantasy writers. That is becoming, uh, in some circles, it's almost like the new Nebula or Locus Award. Like it's becoming really big. Like things like that are happening out there, and not everyone's paying attention, but a lot of people are paying attention. And everybody tends to get caught up in what the quote unquote, it doesn't matter what your industry is, music or the establishment is doing, right? But the establishment changes. The establishments get overthrown. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying that it can happen. I'm not saying it should happen or it's a good thing to happen. I'm just saying that those things do happen. And as you said, we have to position ourselves, be ready for those shifts, right? You're a science fiction fan. I'm a big science fiction fan too. Star Trek, you have to be ready. When Zephyr Cochrane created warp speed capabilities, okay, it's too late to say, well, it's created now. So whether you're ready for it or not, people are gonna be flying at warp speed. So when it's done, it's done. They're on to that. So either you fly at warp speed or you get left behind. So and I think that's very much where we are in the publishing industry. Again, when I saw that amalgamation, that recent merger, buyout, acquisition / whatever you want to call it, to me, I'm in my head, Amazon is what I look to. I think Amazon is the one game changer that nobody knows, that could throw total volatility into everything and totally change everything. It already has changed, but change everything about the way publishing is going. And I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do, excuse me, with the industry in terms of their power and what they leverage. Because again, if they so chose tomorrow, every single element of major traditional publishing could be potentially bought up by them. What would that look like, right? What would traditional publishing eventually cease to exist? That's possible. Or would they enhance it in a new form? Who knows? But again, I'm fascinated to see where that's going to go, and I feel honored and privileged that I'm in a position that I have now become a published author, and I'll like you, whether you're published or about to be published or in that sphere, we're going to be there to see and experience, be part of this shift.
Oh, without a doubt, this is um, it's one of those things that like it's hard to really because it was just like a feeling. It was like the culmination of like everything that had been going on. All the negativity being brought on, being projected by the news, all the things going on, transpiring last year that are still conspiring now and continuing to conspire. It's one of those things that it brings you back to like now this is a vast gross over overshot of it, but fantasy and all Tolkien specifically, when did those kick off? World War I. After the atrocities of World War I, when did the next wave of sci-fi hit? Right after Hiroshima, World War II. There is something about that level of environment being so negative. Oh, and all the great stuff that happened. Frankenstein was a direct result of everything that happened with the Black Plague. You know, all these things are like it's because people need respite. They need escapism, and like there is nothing better than fiction. And right now is a hot seat, and it just like it all just clicked in, especially at where it is. I mean, if I want a book right now, I have two options. I can go ahead, I can press a couple buttons, and I could wait 2 or 3 days, and I would have a physical edition of it. Or I can literally hit two buttons, and I'm reading it right there on my phone.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I'm a huge fan, and I also am a huge supporter of like physical copies. I'm not starting that debate. But are you really gonna argue with me? Because I love sitting, you know, I don't know what type of rich people are doing over here, but I don't have a library with like one of those like nice lazy boy chairs that I can go and smoke my pipe in and read with a nice little nightstand. I'm reading on my couch and I'm laying down. I don't know if you ever read while you're laying down, but books are kind of heavy, and it's like this plus you know I'm not even gonna get into all that stuff. If you read, you know what I'm talking about. And then vice versa, my phone. The moment it gets too bright, I literally switch the brightness. What are we talking about here? You know what I mean? I start getting a little bit lazy. I increase the font. And listen, I would honestly consider myself a grandpa. I did not have social media prior to the need for marketing for the book. I don't like upgrading my iPhone frequently. I upgrade my computer. That's because like engineering and all that stuff. But that's just like that side. I really am not. I don't keep up with the latest stuff. I had to Google how to work Zoom to even start this podcast. I'm telling you, I'm like real naive when it comes to this type of stuff. But even that, like, you just blow past it for like the need and how everything is growing. I mean, it's unreal. It's unreal how everything is just changing and how you as an author change and how the environment. I mean, it's unreal.
Yeah, and I feel that for me, I very certainly not exceptional with technology at all, and being older, and so many things you're learning on the fly, learning from younger colleagues. My wife and I fumbling and figure our way out. Again, thankfully, I have Friesen to help guide us. They have a lot of great people there that have really been helping us out. But at the same time, I have to do a lot of my, obviously you're writing. I do my writing on the computer, exclusively on the computer. So you're typing away. I work a lot on computers in my job. I'm not in that industry, but I have to be on the computer a lot in my job. Part physical and very much part
Yeah, of
computer
course.
work. And then I find that, and because I'm old fashioned, and I learned to read. My generation learned to read the physical book. I need this. So
Likewise.
I do a lot of review of other people's work where they're sending you an ARC, and it's a Mobi or EPUB or whatever, and you're downloading and you're reading it because that's what they're sending. You don't have a physical book, and you're trying to do a review from it, help them out, and just like they do for you, and you have to read that method, but I much prefer to have this and be going, yeah, chapter 31, and go backwards, and I missed that part. Oh, that doesn't make sense. I prefer that. But this, and will this be around in 50 years? I think so, because as much as we believed, I remember growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and they said, oh no, paper is not going to exist anymore. Well, our reliance on paper is anything has increased in terms of things like contracts, legal documents. Like, we still have all this paper. right? As much as we have so much that it's been reduced and everything's electronic, we still have a lot of paper. And I still think there is a segment of society that still feels that comfort in picking this up and reading this, at least now. In the future, who knows? But
And
I
it's an
think
art
that
piece.
yes, and it's an art piece, and it's a status symbol, right? There's some people, like you said, you you're so spot on, man. Like, yeah, I would love to have one of those libraries with that really, plush leather,
You
expensive
know,
leather chair, and these, wood,
Freudian glasses. You know.
yeah, superbly finished bookshelves with, wall-to-wall bookshelves with all hardcover,
Yeah.
all expensive hardcover books, all my favorite fancy books, all, but how many people can afford that, right? But at the same time, you know what? I think that there people will have a mix. Now we'll always have a mix of this versus electronic, and I don't think this is going away anytime soon. I think people still love to lay on a beach, to lay in the house. And it's a pandemic. People are on lockdown. You know what? A lot of people work from home and they're tired of staring at a computer all day. They have to stare at a computer for the job. They have to help their children with their online classes. They may be taking online classes themselves to further education because perhaps they've had an employment transition. There's all kinds of reasons. People are more on their computers. Everybody sends you everything else is on your phone, your tablet, all your social media. Your life is for most people, their phone's their life. For some people, the phone runs their house and it heats it and turns on the lights. And but I think there is a point where getting away from that and picking up one of these is a real benefit, especially in a pandemic where, as positive as social media is, a lot of studies show that it can increase depression and
Oh, without a
and
doubt.
negatively impact your mental health. So
FOMO,
uh,
without a doubt.
so exercise, great, all those things are great too. But I also think that there is a simplistic, really great feeling about picking up one of these and losing yourself and putting your phone in another room for a minute. You can put the volume up if you're expecting an important call, whatever, and check it. But and just or in bed, before instead of watch TV or being on scrolling through on your phone, pick up one of these and just reading and losing yourself and getting sleepy, but lose yourself in the pages and or being so intrigued you can't put it down and you're awake and you're like, I gotta read. Oh, one more chapter, one more chapter. There is a really special feeling about books that way.
Yeah, without a doubt. And honestly, you brought up like a really great point. It's actually kind of like coincided with what I was saying, but I guess I missed my own point because it's the whole like escapism, and part of the escapism isn't just what we're seeing on our phones; it's just being on our phones in itself. And I guess I missed
Yes.
that actually because that's part of it. People want to be able to pick up something like physical, be able to read it, and be able to dive into it, fold the pages. I'm more thinking because again, I'm thinking just future tense and what certain platforms are doing with motion and with different Waterpad.
Yes.
Waterpad. I always say it wrong. It's Wattpad. Uh,
Wattpad.
or is it? It is Waterpad.
It's Wattpad, as far as I
Wattpad.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. I my first language is Spanish, and even though I'm so far away from that, I still do that all the time. I say salmon, I pronounce the L. You cannot get me out of it. There's a certain things that I add letters, I'll take letters out. People try to
Yeah.
argue with me. I'll be like, hey, listen, when I said the words, you didn't think of like a squirrel, right? You thought what you know what I mean? All right, then leave me alone.
So
uh,
that's awesome. But you're multilingual, bro. And hats off to you again. I have no head for languages. So again, hats off to you. I wish I could be fluent in another language. I have no head for languages
oh
whatsoever.
my
So
look, let me tell you. The reason I've been getting so deep into history is because I love languages. Like when I watch like stuff on Netflix. I mean, again, I'm sounding like such a I'm sounding like I'm so like hoity-toity, but like
No,
I
no, not at all. You don't
specifically
sound bougie at all. You don't sound
bougie.
bougie at all.
That was the word I was looking for. So
Trust me.
bougie. But like when I watch like foreign stuff, I always watch it and then in the you know native language with the English subtitles because
Mhm.
Spanish is romance. So there's a lot of times that I love picking up like where I can understand where the root of that language came from, like the root of that
Yeah.
word, and then like other stuff that I'm like, yo, where did they get that from? and just how they speak. So like France, like France. Wow, the French language has always been known for being like really like they care a lot about their language, right? Like
Yes.
like they believe that if you can't speak their language like correctly, you shouldn't be speaking it.
Yes.
Like
Agreed.
they keep like a tight lock on it, and when you listen to it, it's beautiful. But if you like just like study their mouths, they don't move. Like it's just like I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. So so like and again, it's beautiful. But like the syllables, the thing that they do, it's like you know how like they'll make fun of like Asian movies because they'll like say like 1,000 syllables and like the translation will be like a sentence. French is
Yeah.
the exact opposite.
Yes.
They'll say 3 syllables and like they literally have to like pause the video in order to keep up with the subtitles. It's like what? How are you so how's that language so efficient? You know what I mean? And honestly,
Yeah.
to go back and forth on the Asian thing, just so people don't like me too me and send me a whole bunch of hate mail. That also depends on the translation because I've seen the opposite too in like Japanese, where like they'll say like you know
Yes.
and it'll be like 3 paragraphs, and it's like all right, dude. Evidently, that means a lot of stuff over there. But again, everything of just language because everything is tied to like everything is tied to history and everything is tied to people. So like just like the way that they interact and just like I don't know because like you take like English, right, which is English and France at a time where literally they were spoken at the same time, right, and they were extreme colonial powers at the time. So France went over and they're the reason why we have Haiti. Spain went over and that's the reason that we have Dominican Republic where I'm from. And then like just the way the language gets polluted because if you hear a Spanish speaking Spanish, they literally sound like everything that they're saying they should be on top of a white horse with metal on them. They sound exactly like how they should sound. Know what I mean? Like conquistadors. You listen to Dominicans and it's just grimy. It's just grimy Spanish. It's dirty. Like it sounds dirty. And I know I'm gonna get hate mail for that, but that's my people. Like it's dirty. Like all the syllables that is supposed to be in there, we're taking all of them out. Oh, no, we don't want to say that one or that. We'll just say this. We'll shorten this. It's just
It's
like
a dialect.
it's a
Yeah.
dialect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with like English versus Cockney. It's
Yeah.
just
Patois. Jamaican patois, right?
yeah, I'm telling you, and everything. And again, it's everything. It, it, I'm t- it's why I just get lost with like writing because like it fascinates me on how much you can dial in on a certain just a little subject and just if you really allow yourself to like put yourself into that shoes of it can just expand. Like I love when a plot is so good that you can change point of views and the story would still be relevant. So let's
Yes.
say that you're building like a kingdom story and it's from the point of view of the king, and obviously you're playing with the weight of the crown, you're playing with like very tough decisions, you're playing with that whole like trope, right? But then if
Yes.
you were just for so whatever reason to switch it to the peasant, it would still be an
Yes.
interesting arc because you're still in the same world but now you're seeing it from a different lens. And to me that's the reason for fantasy. I'm a huge fantasy nerd too. Like what I'm writing is sci-fi fantasy. It's on a different
Wow.
planet and a different thing. It's a whole different its own different dimension, all its own stuff. And I
I
get
can't wait to
lost.
read it, man. Can't wait to read it. I'm
Well,
getting
I
stoked just hearing it. Just
well,
getting
I'm
stoked
telling you,
hearing it, man.
it's unreal when you were talking about your main character because that whole same thing is happening to a character of mine, where it kind of like the opposite, where he was very altruistic as a child, and then as he grew up and kind of like got the power that he's been seeking, he became more and more less and less woke and became very like
Yeah.
idealistic and very like set on like the things. And believe it or
Yeah.
not, I actually really said it to be religious. Not that there's no like a I guess it could be, but there's no like religious aspects I would normally like the
Uh,
general aspects of religion in the book, but he kind of develops it because like it's the things that like he does in order to take power and all these things that he makes it seem like it's righteous. And like that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. He's very charismatic. So like all the things that he does, it's not just like, oh, I did it because I'm awesome. No, I did it because this is da. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
he's like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
like I'm a huge fan of like art, and one of the graphics that I have is a propaganda poster that says like, you know, save Niamar. Niamar is the name of the planet.
Yeah.
That's called Save Niamar, Join the Legion. And it's
Mhm.
like Zako, which is like the main character, you know, standing with his arms thing, and it's like, you know, thousands of like people behind them, and it's like, you know, the glory of Niamar all behind it, and like the
Yeah.
sun
Yeah.
radiating and every like thing. And the artist just got the perfect rendition of what, because I made the original sketch,
Wow.
but the artist just got the perfect idea of it because it's exactly what Zako is and what he represents. I mean, like he makes the Legion, and the Legion is just he names it that just for whatever reason. Obviously, there's like, you know, references to the Bible, but he names it that just because he thinks it's a cool name. But as he goes on, and like, you know, he starts uncovering all the truths that were like that were covered by the government prior to him, that he, like, you know, usurped. He starts saying all the that they do is light based because, you know, he illuminated the people. He brought light
Wow.
to the darkness, you know, that whole thing. So they become the Legion of Light. And like he just like rolls on with it out of ego, and just like, you know, it just balloons. But
My
then
brother, I want to press buy. I want to go to Amazon now and press buy. If your book was here now, click. Okay, you sold it. I'm on it. I'm on it. I'm on it, man. When it comes out, I'm there, brother. I'm there. I'm
well,
there, man.
well, likewise,
Oh,
like the references I made, I already read a part some of Drowned Kingdom. You know what I mean? The
you
reference, yeah, like
sorry?
I read some of of Drowned Kingdom. That's how I made the reference to Second King, the Second Prince, and all those things. I read some of it.
You started reading? Would you read the inside the cover on Amazon or something? Or
No, I got it off Amazon. I got into the
you
prologue.
bought it?
Yeah, I got the prologue
Oh
and I
my
got a
goodness!
chapter. Well, I support the authors, you know.
Oh my gosh! Thank you, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, man. Thank you, brother. Man, you touched me, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I didn't
Not,
realize that.
not,
I
I don't
didn't
even.
realize that. Thank you.
Well, like, that's why I made like the references to the book and all that, because like, you know, oh, okay. You probably had that on Amazon. Okay, okay. I didn't realize that part. But yeah, that's why I was like, you know, going on with you on the whole beginning of the book and everything. Is, you know, really into it.
Oh well, thanks. Well, I hope you continue to be into it. It's as you know, with your book, and your book sounds phenomenal. I'm like, I cannot wait to buy your like now. Now you got me on. You only bought it. And you're like, hey, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? When's it coming out? Like, so my TBR list, like yours, probably is crazy. But sometimes you have to like. There's certain books that there's certain books you really want to read them. That's why you're TBR list. But then something drops, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to get that now, right? And you just go like, you have me sold, man. Your book sounds phenomenal. I can't, and has all the themes that I'm looking forward to, like that charismatic, main character, and that whole destiny and being able to, motivate and lead. Like it's just, yeah, it sounds it sounds phenomenal. Wow, that's not too. But
Well,
anyways, you buy my book, man.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
I
no, please continue.
so I just want to say I hope you enjoy. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. Honestly, I can't wait to think
Oh no, I'm
when
definitely
you
gonna. Yeah, we'll continue talking. You know, like we'll still be. You know, we're friends. We're gonna continue
yeah,
talking and
absolutely.
everything. I'm gonna put the review up on Amazon, whatever the heck you need.
Oh my gosh,
We'll do it.
thank you.
No. We're about it. But and I know
Wow,
and again, Drown Kingdom out on Amazon now. Pick it up. I'm telling you, it is worth every cent. Truly. And again, if you guys haven't noticed, what he's wearing is a hat, and I've been kind of like putting it. We haven't really talked about it too much, but that thing is actually the symbol of the religion. It's the triangle with a circle around it. You know, it's like a whole thing. It's kind of the cross. It's a beautiful little thing, and it's like a logo. It's definitely something you should pick up. Obviously, as merch, you need to pick up the merch. Support. That's what we're doing out here. Support, especially for the indies.
thank you, brother.
Of course. And
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
yeah, if I can be honest, you got me so excited about talking about like about that type of like charisma. And I hate to steal thunder because I usually just like love to just like stick on the other person's like work, but I do have to say that writing that type of like character is just, it really is awesome. Like as you were saying, like the idea of like of like a charismatic, like kind of like writing like that epic like speech and everything like that. But then like my favorite part are like the dualities, like the so he has this crazy epic speech, I think in like end of chapter 5, I believe. But in chapter 3 is when he wakes up for it and he's like thinking about it. And he wakes up the same way like you and I would wake up on a Monday. Like he's just like, God,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Just like it's that chapter is actually dark comedy because like you don't even know his position until about the end of the chapter because he's just
Cool.
bitching about life. You know what I mean? He's just like complaining. It's just like, oh, this is annoying, and just like he like doesn't want. Like just like complaining about how he wishes like things were just like simpler, and then he starts like getting like a barge on the door, and he's like starts you start picking up the idea that like, all right, he actually has a lot more position, and then when he starts like shouting and like people like people start talking and like things like then you start getting the idea, and then by chapter 10, it's just full fledged. You understand this dude's power. He's not a leader of a colony. He has the whole shebang. The whole planet is his thing, all of it. And he's not a tyrant. He's an elected official. That is this dude's charisma.
Wow.
He went from the government prior, convinced everybody to go for one government, and then he got elected himself on top of that government. Like unreal. And that's just half of the story. Because the other half is the other side. Because again, the things that he's religious about aren't necessarily things that are necessarily nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's exactly. So the other side, there's another side that's brewing, and they have their little rebellion, and they believe that they're as impassioned about their side as he is about his side. The only difference is that you have like a monk basically leading this pack, which is like a person that's like very philosophical, but when it comes to action, they're like, Whereas you have this other person, you have Zako, who's just like, yeah, what's up? Right now, you and you do this, that, and people just listen. Charisma.
Yeah. And you know what? Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills, man. This is like, oh my goodness. I will be hounding you with this drops, man. You sucked me in, man. I'm like, I gotta get some of that, man. I gotta get some of that.
Well, if I can be honest, and I was actually going to leave this for like when we were off recording, but since we're already talking about it, I already told you about the like I normally I don't like mentioning whether what I do about the books and everything, but since we're already there, I could send you a copy of it, and we could do the same thing that we're doing with your book. I give you a nice little review on it on thing, and you give me a nice little review. That'd be cool.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, that's what I would be so honored. Please, I'd be so honored. That's amazing. Oh, yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can even throw your quote on the book.
I would be so honored. I would be so honored. I'd be so honored.
Well, believe me, the honor would be more on more side. That'd be awesome.
So privileged, my friend. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. I would love to. I'd love to. Absolutely love to. That'd be amazing. Oh wow, I can't do this.
Yeah, well, phenomenal. I can't. Yeah, and you know what? While we're already here and like talking about it, another thing that I love is, like I said, is that like I'm building like a huge like repertoire of like artists and everything like that. So one of the things that I want to start focusing on, and I have a budding suspicion that you probably will be into this too, is that I want to start doing graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you are ever interested in?
It's something that I've thought about. I'm going to say that it's something that is going to be a future thing because I know, I have a 7-book series alone. And you try to think, where am I going to, I'm even thinking, how am I going to get all this done? And everything, you know how it is in life, like, everything comes up is like, okay, now
I have ADHD though. It's just like I have all those books, and then like I'll get another 2 books ideas on a Monday and be like, oh man, what to even do? It's the most stressful thing ever.
That's also the advantage of youth, because I know for me, I feel that clock ticking. Like I plotted, okay, if I write 20 to 30 books, that'll take me into my 70s if I live that long. If I'm lucky, and even if I live into my 90s, if I don't have Alzheimer's, like, you know what I mean? Like you have this plot, you have that one advantage of youth that you're like, I can dabble in this and dabble in this and dabble in this because
I hear that talk. I hear that clock because I'm telling you, time It's unreal how fast it's going. Like I remember, I vividly remember how 3 hours felt when I was 8 years old.
Hmm.
Vividly, like it felt like 9 years.
Hmm.
3 hours
Yeah,
now, I'm
yeah.
telling you, they pass in 3 minutes. Like 3 years are like everything is just going by faster and faster, and it really feels like if I don't sit down and make sure I put my mark and make really chew my food, really chew the food that I bite, it's gonna go. So believe me, I feel that talk. I feel that clock ticking as well, and it's just that's why it's almost more stressful because I know that's happening. I know what I want because like I said, I have a projected saga,
Yeah.
but it's like all these things coming. I want a graphic novel. That'd just be awesome. I'm a huge visual person, but I love writing as well. It just
And you know what? That clock only accelerates at my age. Like I said, my oldest son is 31, so I probably in that neighborhood, or younger or older. But it's hard to tell age. But I know that I must at least finish these seven before I take anything else because I have a hard enough time doing that with all the marketing, self promotion, social media. My regular full time job, I work shift work. Like my wife, my family, like I don't know where to fit anything else in.
mm,
But I know that in the future, though, I've had in the back of my head, graphic novels could be one of those avenues that I need to get the Drown King saga written first. I know that because I will never, I don't want to have George R. R. Martin syndrome, Patrick Rothfuss
mm-hmm.
syndrome, phenomenal authors who, for whatever reasons, their own reasons, their other projects, family issues, whatever, and it could happen anyway, but just don't finish what their fans are
Clamoring.
clamoring for. That, that's not me. One thing I did want to do was be a very prolific indie writing because frankly that's how you make money and that's also how you establish yourself. So
Definitely.
my goal is to produce one book in the series every year at the same time every year. So this book dropped in February, the beginning of February 2021. Believe me, book two is dropping in February of God willing, barring all incident, of February 22 and 2, and book three 2023 before 2024, and so on and so on and so on. So until those seven have dropped, I know that I won't be dabbling in much. I'm just being straight up. However, once you're getting into past that, and I do plan those prequel series pretty quickly after, but there'll be more flexibility in terms of what I do and what I take on and where I go. But I am pretty committed to um, those seven books have to get out there, and they
Mm,
have to get out there in essentially an 8 year time frame.
definitely.
So I know I'm having a hard time keeping up now with everything. I can't imagine take out like this is my sole project until they're finished.
Mm.
I have to do that for myself, right? Because that feeling of when this thing hit, man, when you that feeling, that feeling. That feeling is I can't describe it. I can't even describe it. And to be able to know that I've produced seven of these things in a story that people want to keep reading, like that, it's overwhelming. That feeling that's what I seek. So I know I made a promise myself to get that done before I do anything else. So, but in the future though, graphic novel, tantalizing, man, tantalizing concept. Graphic novels, it's
Dude, look, you know how expand like how like stretched out I am, well, like how like bugger mind my like I am. I wrote a short story, and that one short story, I'm not gonna name which one because like it's just one of like I'd like for people to find out. But that one short story, literally, I'm not lying, encompasses every single thing that I will ever write ever.
what?
Yeah, the short story has about 1,100 words, and on my mother, it literally, if you like single down what happens into it, it glosses over the entire myth, everything. but
Wow.
very gloss. It's one of those things that like it's one of those puzzles that you can only know like after you read like a couple things and it's like, oh
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
But like and it's already released. That's one of my favorite. Like I think that's what like gets me like more thrilled than anything else. It's more just like the Arthur C. Clarke effect. It's kind of like
Mhm,
releasing
mhm.
so much work that people's then can start like putting the snake thread in between
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's something that gets me more excited than anything else. I couldn't tell you why. There's something about Easter eggs and like lore that just
Yeah.
like get me take me out of something. Know what I mean? That
No,
when I can
I totally get it. I
oh
totally
my
get it.
oh my god when I watch like Doctor Who and then like they put like a reference to like another sci-fi that I love, I'm just like losing my mind. Or when somebody like makes a reference to Doctor Who, I'm losing my mind. I don't know what it is.
I totally get it. You will find through my series, there's gonna be Easter egg. Like when you know, there's Easter eggs already in this that you're gonna go. And I know you're an extremely intelligent, insightful guy, and you're a writer. You'll read something, you'll be like, yeah, we're gonna see that later. You're gonna know. You're like, he's not just putting this there for no reason. That's not just superfluous to like, why would he put that in there? Like, you're gonna pick up, and I can't wait for us to chat. I can't wait to read your book and see what Easter eggs I can pick out that I think,
Oof.
that's not just in there for no reason.
And I'll give you a quick little one. One is in the title, and we were talking about it. Plato. So Plato wrote a little thing called Allegory of the Cave.
Yes.
You're aware. This book is called Allegory of the End, and I'll leave that right there. Yeah.
All right. All right, my
Same.
brother.
Yeah.
All right.
Same topic. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Just stretched out a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is gonna be, man. This is wow. Okay. Okay. I'm not gonna say anything more. I'm just gonna read. Sometimes you just have to read. You know, I believe your book is gonna blow me away. I've read a lot of books that I underestimated and they blew me away. I read some that had so much hype and they were like, okay, it's good, but and reading is subjective, right? But I have a feeling, a really strong feeling that your book's gonna blow me away. So now I'm really, really stoked. Really stoked.
Well, thank you. There's a lot of stuff that I'm biting my tongue about. Believe me, I just don't want to spoil the book. I want to make sure that people go on Amazon, go on Kindle. They get their own versions of it. Make sure A Drowned Kingdom. You already heard it here. One a year.
Thank you.
One a year. Pick up this one. Make sure to does Amazon? Yeah, Amazon does have a subscribe. So when you pick up the book, hit subscribe to the author, and every time the man drops something, boom, bam, bam, boom, get it done. Stop playing with me. Come on, you know the deal.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the love, man. And right back at you. Right back at you, man. And I cannot wait to start, when I've read it, to start really pumping your work. And, I'm all about, as we talk about writing community, man, that's what we're all about.
Love it.
That's what we're about, support each other. And,
love it.
I love everything I've heard so far. I cannot wait to delve into this world that you've created. And, I will definitely be picking up you're going to send me your, but I'm going to, don't worry. I'm going to be picking up the rest. And I can't wait. I can't wait. Now I'm really excited. We met. I'm so happy we met. Yeah.
Well, another thing that I kind of I got so lost in the conversation. It was so good, especially about the history. The moment you said history, I was like, "God, geez, I'm in trouble now." But one thing that I want to talk about is I'm a huge fan. I get a lot of my inspiration from TV and movies. Would you say that you're similar? Do you have like a similar trait?
I am. Some of my favorite movies, adaptations of books, but original movies too, and you can name them, right? Obviously, all the Lord of the Rings trilogies, a lot of classic movies. Gladiator, obviously TV shows such as Game of Thrones, The Witcher. I am a big geek culture is big for me. Star Wars, Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh my God, Star Wars.
I the Marvel universe, cinematic universe. I absorb all that stuff. I don't have time to delve into most of it the way I did before. I'm just too busy. But that's part of my subconsciousness, and I write my books very much like a movie, scenes. When I don't write
Yep.
my books from start to finish, A to B, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 37.
End and then backwards, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
sometimes I write in the middle.
Same.
I'll write the scene where this happens to authoring, and then I'll tie things together, and then I'll backdate it's disjointed, but it works for me. I've met other fellow writers that write that way, so I don't feel so bad now. It's not always linear, but we get to the same point, right? And
Hmm.
that's all that matters, that you finish and that it looks like this, something like this at the end, right? So I find that increases the dramatic effect and the poignance. Some scenes really being poignant. So
Yes.
if you read that scene, that's like, like you can almost sense like, did he write this as part of the whole book, or was this kind of like, did he write this? This seems so. It just a standout scene. And some authors achieve that effect by simply writing chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sequential order. I achieve it by I'll take a certain scene in my head, like a movie, and all I'm doing is I'm just sitting there like blank screen, and I'm seeing that scene play out like on a movie. I'm seeing what my characters look like, the positions they're taking, what the background setting is, and then I write the scene. And then I may join that scene up later to some other part of the book. But yeah, that's essentially how I write. And again, it's for some people they find it extremely disruptive, right?
No,
And
not at all.
at all. But that's how I write, and it works for me. Everybody's got to do what works for them. Like I said, it's all matters, brothers. You get to the finish line,
Oh,
right?
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I look for as much as I say I have all these crazy ideas, nothing matters until you actually write it down and finish the actual shebang and actually do it. You know what I mean? It's really, oh my God, it's un. There is nothing more than I love than this industry. There's nothing more than I love than this like genre than like doing this. I'm so happy that I eventually found it. I'm telling you, I was not fortunate enough to know that this was my thing when I was like 6. I was everywhere else. Like I remember, I used to do cartoons. I used to like draw cartoons, and I was like convinced. I was like, oh no, I probably should just do this. I'll do cartooning. And then like when I got to like high school and it was like time to go to college, everybody was like, all right, well, what are you gonna do? And I was like, all right, well, I like writing and I like drawing, but why would I go to school for that? They're just gonna mess up my vision of drawing and writing.
Yeah.
So might as well go for something that I'm like bad at. So my stupid logic was that if I'm bad at math and science, I should go somewhere that I can get better at math and science. And I go to engineering. I go to engineering with
You're an engineer.
dude, I got rammed for the first like year and a half of engineering. Like I went to school because I played like football for a little bit in high school. So when I got
Yeah,
to
we're the same. Okay. All right.
yeah, defensive line. Cause I used to be like way chunky. I lost some weight in college, but not like way chunkier. I mean, like I was like pushing like close to 300 when I was in high school. It was unreal. Uh, but pretty effective defensive line. Really low center of gravity. Basically, just like a fat tub of walls, like boom, 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 boom. But what eventually happened is like I got there with a pre-cal education that was the highest math I went into, and the first class I took of math was engineering calculus 1, which was like a year and a half of ahead of anything I was doing, and on top of that the engineering version, so it was like the harder version at that. Dude, it was just like bent over. It was unreal.
I,
But then I'm telling you, there's nothing that I appreciate more, because all those things like led into like what my inspiration of writing is. What my inspiration of writing is that I get an idea for a technology or an idea, I envision it, I think about its pitfall. So basically, I create the beginning, and I think I create the ending, and then I fill the middle with whatever it is that I want: historical reference, some dark comedy. I'm a huge fan of comedy, so I always like putting like those type of existential moments, even at like really dramatic events, because there's just certain things that like are low key tragic, but
yeah,
hilarious at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
So imagine me and you are running around in Victorian England, right? Let's put a year. 1456, right?
Well, Victorian, more like the 1800s, like
Oh,
Victoria. Or you
what
mean
is?
medieval England?
Yes, I'm sorry. You're right, because Victorian was after Renaissance.
Yeah, Victoria is Queen Victoria, essentially.
Yes.
That era.
Yeah. I'm really good. Like, I'm not good at dates or names. I'm
I
just
hear
like
you,
I'm really
man.
good at events and like
I hear
people
you.
and like what people do. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
But yeah, let's go back to like that type of England. Me and you are about 8 years old. We're running around, right? All of a sudden, me and you go into the woods. We both eat berries, right? We're both running around. All of a sudden, my neck starts to like I
Constrict.
keel over. Yeah, I constrict. I keel over and die right in front of you, right? We have no idea what an allergy to berries are,
Yeah.
right? You 100% without a doubt. You just if you didn't believe in God before, you do now because God just did that to him with 100%. And
Yeah.
whatever it is that you were doing at that time was wrong. So let's
Yeah.
say for whatever reason, like I don't know, you were playing you were playing catch with like a pine cone. Oh, pine cones of the devil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Evidently, that pine, God just stroked this dude down because
Yeah. Yeah.
we're that's what we get. And there's something tragic in that, but there's also something kind of hilarious in that because there's always like that thing of like that fear literally is just not knowing,
Yeah.
almost to a comical level. Like people used to die from heart asphyxiation when there was a solar eclipse because
Yeah.
the sun would literally go black. If you have no idea what that is, imagine for every day that you've been alive, the sun was whatever it is, and
Yeah.
then one day it's black. You have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
People think the world's ending. People would literally die from like
Yeah.
fear of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's something tragic in that, but there's something like if you put it in the tense, kind of hilarious. Like if you put it
No,
like
no.
in a comedy movie, people are looking and just like faint right there. kind of
There's a
funny.
there's a dark comedic element, and grimdark is all about that grimdark fantasy, which mine isn't. But I read a lot of grimdark, and I love it. Is a lot of it is about that, those, and especially about the just the randomness of life, and especially
Yes.
because when you look at the context of not just today, but especially as you said, in ancient times previous, that again, people get stung by a bee and they die. It can happen today, anaphylactic shock, etc. But so
But at least we have there's like a doctor with a lab coat to be
yeah,
like, oh, he died from
we have
this.
an
Back
EpiPen.
then, you'd just be like, guy did it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, or you have an EpiPen, or whatever. But the things that eating the wrong fowl, yeah, you're done. Like so. But I do want to, without tangents. First, I want to go back quickly and say that first of all, you are brilliant, and I really really have to say this, that people who have your skills, both the quantitative mathematical skills. I know you say, oh, you're bad at math, but like I'm suck at math. Like, but also the writing, reading skills. Those people are really smart. And plus languages, you're a smart guy. Like that, if you can, I'm very limited. Like my thing is writing. Scientific, the quantitative side is not my thing. And so you are brilliant. But I also want to say too, yeah, the randomness of life and is always something that fascinates me, and that why some people ascend to great heights, and then some people never make that. Those are all fascinating concepts.
Mm.
And I think one thing that you have to love and appreciate about fantasy and science fiction to a degree is that so much of it is about for the hero to survive. A lot of it is just dumb luck, right? Fate, whatever you want to call it, right? To survive a war, whether in current times or in medium time, is really like, man, like you really lucked
Crapshoot.
out because the
Yeah.
odds are heavily stacked against you. But people survived. People were maimed and they lost limbs and there was horrible things that happened. But people still survived, and some people survived multiple battles and lived years and died old in their beds. And that, but then some people didn't, and that's life, unfortunately, and especially for the person that it happened to. And but that's fantasy allows that escapism. You talked about escapism, and fantasy allows you to you get attached to certain characters. And I talk about this with all my fellow writer friends all the time. Like when a character dies, it has to mean something.
Mm.
If you kill someone off before anyone really has any attachment to them, the effect, it's almost useless to the story. But when a character you've built an affinity with and a relationship with, and you've seen them good, bad, and you have an understanding of who they are and what they were, and you like them or you appreciate things about them, when they get taken out of the plot, that way, it can really, really at least a lasting impression. And you also want books. I'll say you want a book that's going to linger with you, whether it's good or bad. You want to remember it after you finish reading it. To me, that's the sign of a great book. If you can remember things about that, or remember a character even, or a phrase, or a tagline,
One
you
little
know,
thing, all you need. That's all.
if
That's all
you
you need to be in the Raptors as a writer.
yeah, if you
That's it.
remember, yep, exactly. If you remember when one kingdom drowns, a new one must rise in its place. If that's all you remember from my book, um, that means I left an impression on you, right? And my book left an impression on you. And I think that's what every author seeks. Long after I'm dead, hundreds of years from now, if someone's picking this up on whatever form a book looks like, and it's like, oh, and that tagline, somebody remembers that tagline, that tagline's been used somewhere, that means that, wow, like that's a big deal, man. That your words have lived on, that tagline has lived on. Something from your novel, um, long after you've passed, people are talking about that. Like it's a reference somewhere, it's searchable somewhere, and someone's referring to it or using to it in an essay, or like that's like, and I think as human beings, we all, unfortunately, whether it's through having children or whatever we're doing, we're seeking immortality, right? And there's a drive, unconscious drive to immortality, and writing is part of that. And I believe that you're trying to get something bigger than yourself that's going to outlast you. And I think your work will have that staying power, and something that future generations will too. Oh wow, AR wrote that. Like wow, that was hundreds of years ago, man. Like, and people still talk about it. The way people still refer to all of the greats, from someone like a Plato down to someone like a Tolkien, and people will talk about perhaps Air Maribel that way someday, right? And that's a real, and that can really happen. That's not fantasy. That can really happen, and I have a feeling it just might happen. So but that's what subconsciously or consciously we seek with our writing, and I'm hoping that a John Kingdom and the John Kingdom saga becomes something that people look back in years to say, you know what, that P.L. Stuart, you know what, he wrote a pretty good book. It has staying power. So
I mean, without a doubt. I mean, thank you for all the praises, but I'm telling you, you're seeing one aspect of me. Trust me, I mean, an uncorrigible idiot sometimes. It is. I'm telling you. The amount of times that like I'll make like mistakes, like I'll have like a banana peel in one hand and my keys in one hand. Which one's going in the trash? You know the answer. It's the car keys. Every time. Like I'm absent-minded. Like what it is that like, you ever see like that movie of like the thing is, I'll be honest, my characters actually are based a lot around me. There's a character named Jid, that like the person that will tell like the other side of it, like the person that's not Zako, the person that's like more philosophic. I based him a lot about that aspect of myself that I kind of don't like. Is that like I'll really just like I'll look at like a tree, like changing foliage, and I'll philosophize over like that one green leaf versus the brown ones, because like the reason why a leaf changes foliage is stress, because they're literally like using exerting all their energy in order to stay on the tree, right? So I'll really philosophize for hours over something simple as that. And then like some people will be like, hey, you want to get out the middle of the road? I'm like, oh yeah, no, yeah, I forgot about that one. I'm telling you, like, stupid things, man. I was in California when Tesla released their like dropped one of the rockets. I can't remember which one. I was outside with my roommates, and we're all just like drinking. It was a Friday night, so we're all drinking. It's just like a really nice like California night, and I see it, and it literally looks like an ellipse in the sky. It looks like the eye of God looking down, right? Because like the it was a spaceship hitting, like, hitting the atmosphere, so it's making, like, like kind of like an aurora effect around, like, the actual, you know light,
Yeah.
so I'm looking at that and I'm just like, Jesus Christ. The first thing that goes in my mind over anything else, and this is right after I graduated engineering, was we're being invaded by aliens. I literally called my mom up and I'm like, yo, this is the end. I swear to God. You understand what I'm telling you? And I'm not joking either. It wasn't one of those things like, oh, this might be the end. I'm like, nah, this is the end. THEEND. We're done.
Okay.
This is done. Mom, I love you. God damn it. I'm sorry that I didn't remember that time when I was 12. God damn it. I'll tell you, just going through it. And then, like, and my friends were like were like, oh yeah, but they were a lot more jokingly about it. 20 minutes later, somebody decides to actually Google it, and it's like a Tesla thing, and I'm just like, oh yeah, no, yeah. No, I was joking. I wasn't really crying.
Gosh, oh my goodness. Yeah, you know what? Like I said, I've had such a blast talking to you, man. I'm so glad I got to know you. Now, obviously, we're going to be friends, for a long time. So I'm so looking forward to reading your work. I'm so humbled you bought mine. I'm praying you enjoy the rest. It's a very some people have commented that my book seems like three different books in one. Each it's in three parts, and in some ways each part is very different, but yet they tie together well. So I'm interested to hear your impressions on the difference between parts one, two, and three of the story, and especially the ending, and how you feel about all that. And believe me, I'll be giving you my impressions of your work when I get to read it. So
Awesome. Well, do you have any closing statements? Do you have any websites, anything that people can find you at?
yes, well, first of all, let me just say that my website, where you can buy the book, you can go on there. It is available on Amazon. It is available on Friesen Press. So I am proudly, again, indie published. Friesen Press is my indie publisher. You can buy it directly from there. It is, if you're a Canadian reader, again, you're supporting a great Canadian business in Friesen, and supporting the author by buying on Friesen. It is also, of course, on Amazon. You can also get it on Barnes and Nobles, etc. All the normal platforms, Indigo Books. So you can buy it there. And my website is www.plstuart.com. So www.plstuart, one word, .com. I am extremely active on really two social media platforms, one more than the other, and that is Twitter is mainly where you're going to find me, right? I'm on Twitter quite regularly. So my Twitter handle is at PL Stuart Writes. So it's at PL Stuart Writes, one word again. And it's the same for my Facebook. So we keep it simple. At PL Stuart Writes for Twitter, at PL Stuart Writes for Facebook. Twitter is the best way to reach me. My DMs are open. You want to speak to me, especially chat about fantasy. I love engaging and talking and helping and supporting people. So find me on Twitter. Link me there. You'll see me there quite a bit, right? But I just want to thank you so much, AR, for giving me this amazing opportunity to get to know you, get to speak to you, and to talk to you about my book of John King. I'm so blown away that you actually bought it. I'm praying you enjoy the read, and I can't wait to hear what you think. And I cannot wait to delve into your book.
Well, thank you. And you heard it here. plstuart.com. That's plstuart.com. Make sure to pick up A Drowned Kingdom, out now, Amazon Kindle. You already heard all the services. PL Stuart, thank you for being on the podcast. Say a nice little farewell to the people.
Everybody, thanks so much for listening. It's been a pleasure being on AR. Thank you, and I'll be seeing you on social media.
Without a single doubt. This is the end of the podcast. AR's Tales, aka the ART podcast. I am AR Ball. Peace out. See you next week, folks.